Welcome to Chapters of Legend, a podcast for people who have to slow down, read deeply, and get lost in great stories. My name is Stavros Stavroulias, and each week we'll explore a new chapter, unpacking the characters, the craft, and the little moments that turn pages into legends. This season we're diving into Jade City, so grab your tea, find your reading nook, and let's begin the next chapter together. Chapters of Legend, Season 1, Episode 5, An Overflow of Jade. So as we're starting off this episode, I just want to start off by apologizing for a bit of the delay in the last couple episodes. I've just had a really busy past couple of weeks here in the summer, but I'm hoping to catch us up a little bit quickly here. We're going to do a couple of back-to-back weeks and get us back on schedule and on track. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at chapters 19 to 23, and it's a bit of a recap of what happened previously. The last few chapters, basically, we just found out and it just ended by learning about the hit that was basically placed on Hilo. And we just saw that whole thing happen at the end of the last chapter of chapter 18. And now we're kind of getting to see the fall of that. This set of chapters was a really good set of chapters. I feel like things moved very quickly in this set of chapters. And we'll go over it as we kind of go through, but I just really felt like with this set of chapters, things were moving. So starting us off with chapter 19, Council of War. Basically in this chapter, we're finding out a bit more about what's been going on with Shay. We haven't kind of seen her for a little bit here, but we're finding out that she's been working late hours, that she's gotten access to the Jade Treasury and the Kick-On Treasury, and she's just been kind of going through all these documents, trying to figure things out, really trying to get down to the bare bones of what's been going on. It's kind of cool. Again, like this is a bit of a chapter where we're learning a bit about the Kickanese culture and how the Kick-On Treasury, which holds like a heavy amount of the Kickanese kind of like country's overall wealth, has very few security systems. And kind of the security system is basically if you were to ever steal or try to steal from the treasury, every Greenbone clan on all of Kick-On would be after you. And so there is some security, but not as much as you would think there would be for a place that has so much jade and so much valuables within it. So she's been kind of working long nights trying to figure this out. And she's pretty sure at this point that there's jade missing from the National Reserve. And so she's here, she's figuring it out, and she is like, okay, I have everything I need. And this is the last night that she's basically going to be there. And she walks off. And she's like, I need to go and find Lan, tell him what's going on, but I'll call him in the morning. And we find a little bit more about one of the other clans, the Hilo Shield clan, and how basically their whole role is effectively being protection for the treasury and also the Prince Yon III, and how that's basically all they do. They kind of are just there. They've basically taken a sworn oath of neutrality, basically, compared to their clans. So they're just there kind of hanging out, doing their thing. As she's walking home, she's realized pretty late that, oh no, she's being followed. And there's a second here where I was like, oh shoot, is she going to get intercepted by the mountain, or what's going to happen here? And there's a really nice, again, just show into, I was going to say the Kickanese culture, but it's not the Kickanese culture. It's really the Greenbone culture. And basically, when she realizes she's being followed, she doesn't even think about what she's going to do. She has a talon knife kind of strapped to her back, turns around, grabs her talon knife, and is just like ready for a fight. And this little quote right here, she'd been raised in a culture that deemed it unthinkable to not respond to a challenge. It did not even occur to Shay that she could run less than 30 seconds to the safety of her apartment building. Which is just a really badass way to be, but also just showcases again that she is not a regular civilian. This is not something a regular civilian would do. This is something a Greenbone would do. And in fact, she finds out that it's her neighbor that's actually been following her because he's just also headed home. And he kind of laughs a little bit and says, man, like you look like a Greenbone. And I promise that I'm not going to surprise you. I'll say hello from far off if I come back, I'm around you again. She gets home and she tries to call Lan, basically to be like, okay, like let me call the call house and just try and figure out what's going on. Doru picks up. just absolutely hate Doru. He's just gross, and we'll get to that more in a second. But basically, when she calls, she finds out that there's been trouble and that things are not good. And so she, as quickly as possible, gets to the call house. And this section, I mean, everything with Shay right now, I'm just really torn by. So this whole section, this whole first part of this next section here, just kind of battling with the fact of if there was a hit on Hilo and all these things happened, like how come no one told me about it? No one called me, no one let me know. But Shay is explicitly asked to be outside of clan business. Yet she still wants to be informed when it suits her, when something's happening. Now granted, sure, this is her brother. There's some things there, but it's also like big time clan business, and she's explicitly asked Lan to leave her out of it. And so, I don't know. I just wrote here, you're either in or you're out. You can't be both. And we'll get to that as we progress through these chapters here, because she does get to the house, finds out a bit about what's going on, sees that Hilo is kind of strapped up and bandaged up. And when she kind of gets there, she's like, wait a second, wait, what's happening? Because all the fists are there. Everybody's kind of geared up, like weapons all over the place. And basically she finds out that, yeah, we're going to confront the mountain. Hilo, Lan, all the fists and the fingers are going to confront the mountain. And there's this one section here that I think is, again, I love Hilo, and I really hope that my adoration for Hilo continues to progress, and I don't have to kind of draw this back. But there's a moment here where Hilo's leaving, like he's leaving the house, he's going towards the cars, and it says, the foyer of the house was filled with Hilo's men, armed to the teeth with moon blades, talon knives, and pistols. As Hilo walked into their midst, they coalesced around him. He did not speak, but seemed, somehow, to acknowledge each of them, with a held glaze, a nod, a held glance, a nod, a touch on the shoulder or arm. I just think he is such a great horn, and this is exactly why the mountain wanted to get rid of him, because he has the loyalty of his people, like no doubt about it. And so yeah, he's about to leave, Lan's about to leave, and I just wrote, shit is about to go down. Like things are going to be happening, and this is about to go down. When Shane kind of tries to stop him, Lan says to her, like she asks, what can I do to help? And Lan says nothing, right? Like you don't have any jade, right? So you can't really do anything. He says nothing, but don't let Doru take over the clan. And then right after that, if he was killed, right? If he was killed, that's kind of what he's saying. He says that. He doesn't say if he was killed, but he says that to her. And in italics right next, if he was killed. So again, I'm just like, Shay needs to decide, does she want to be in or does she want to be out? Because now she's asking what she can do. You can't really do anything if you're not an official part of the clan. So, not great. And then right at the end of this chapter, Khal Sen comes down. And just, he is such a horrible person. Just such a horrible old man. He comes down kind of in a storm, points at Hilo and says, this is your fault. What have you done? Like, what have you done? You were always a good for nothing hooligan, impulsive hooligan, all this stuff. You're going to ruin our family. He's just screaming at him. And Hilo's like, they tried to kill me, Granda. They tried to kill me. They almost killed one of my horns, or one of my fists. And he just, Khal Sen is just kind of screaming, oh, me and Ait, we never would have fought like this. We never would have done this. But I'm just like, Ait is dead, dude. Like, this guy's so stuck in his old ways, and we'll see it again in a little bit in these chapters, but he's just so stuck in his old ways. And like, I hate to say it, I just feel like everything would be better for Hilo, for Lan, for Shay, if Khal Sen would die. And that sucks. Like, I don't want to be thinking that, but he's just so aggressive towards them. It's not great. It's not great. And so he kind of, he has this big outburst of energy, and he kind of like falls down almost like just like spent. And Lan basically tells Shay, stay with Granda, and turns to leave. And Shay nods and wants to say good luck, wants to say something, but just can't bring herself to say anything. And I'm just like, okay, here we go. Now it's happening. The next chapter, Clean Blades at the Factory. We're going straight into mountain control territory. And basically we know that the Kikon Special Textile Company is basically where now it's like a hub for mountain green bones. and they're just going straight there. Straight into the belly of the beast is basically what I said. It is a bit of a risky decision, but they're like armed to the teeth, have so many people here. They get here, and they wait for a little bit. Nothing comes out. So Hilo calls over one of his fingers and basically they give him the message to go inside and present them with the situation. Basically, they want to make sure that all of the armpit is theirs, and they want retribution for the two people that attacked. And so it's like, oh, yikes, this is a bit, I just kind of said this is a big ask. I would be shocked if this works out for them. It's just a really big ask. And then they're all just kind of waiting. They're waiting for like half an hour, just hanging out outside. There's one section here that I'm going to read. I just thought the wording and the prose of this was really beautiful. It was one of those days when sun and cloud grappled with each other in the sky, and the waiting men were bathed in alternating patches of heat and shadow, as if the weather itself was unsure of how the day would proceed. Really beautiful, and really sets the tone of what's going on here. And so they're kind of sitting around waiting for quite some time. The mountain leaves them waiting for quite some time. And in that time that they're kind of sitting there waiting, Lan is really reflecting on why they attacked Hilo instead of him and all these things. He's kind of, I think Lan in this little section is really realizing that there might be, like, he might need to be stepping it up a little bit as Pillar just to make sure he gains more respect with other clans. And he says it at some point here where when he became Pillar, he continued to do all the things that Kalsen would have done and really have a lot of maintaining peace and stuff within the clan, which gives him a lot of respect within his clan, but it doesn't intimidate or dissuade rivals. And so he's kind of just really stuck here thinking, and at some point when they've been sitting here for a long time, Hilo jumps off of the hood of his car, walks out into the kind of middle of the pavement of this parking lot in front of the factory and says, "You see this, Gaunt?" he shouted. He spread his arms wide and turned in an arrogant circle. "I'm still alive. Don't send your puppies to kill me. Come out and do it yourself, you dog fucking coward." And he's just screaming at him, and all of his fists are just banging, and we're just waiting. We're just waiting to see what's happening. And again, this is where Lan's starting to feel the sense of shame and anger at himself and all this stuff. And it's not good. Not good for him. But eventually, the two people that attacked Hilo and his fists come out, Chon and Gam, led by their messenger, who runs over, tells them what's going on. And they basically come out. Chon, they say, is like a really low-level kind of finger, not anybody that's really that important. But Gam is the second fist of the Mountain Clan. And so he comes out kind of chest held high and tells them, "Our Pillar agrees to all of your demands. You will keep all the armpit except for like the small section of the armpit that belonged to us already. The rest of it will be yours. And we will be here. We are ready to die for our clan, basically. But," he says, "I want to die as a proper fist should." And he says, "Call Lenshuan, Pillar of No Peak. I offer you a clean blade." And again, we're learning more about the green bone culture here, because we find out basically that a clean blade means a duel to the death, where no one can take retribution, no family members or anybody can take retribution. This is just a one-on-one fight to the death. Winner gets to keep the horn, or keep the jade, all these things. And Hilo is immediately like, "Oh my god, Lan, I don't know if we should do this. This is beneath you. Like, you shouldn't be doing this as the Pillar. Like, I'll do it instead." And he's really trying to do this, but Lan is really realizing, like, this is something that I need to do. I have not proven myself in this way in some time. And he's realizing that the mountain is basically trying to test him. They tested Hilo yesterday and saw that he is somebody that is not someone to be trifled with, and now they're testing Lan. And basically, Hilo's like, "You don't want me to what do you expect me to honor this?" And Lan's like, "You're worried I might lose?" Hilo says, "He's not trivial." And Lan says, neither am I. And he's ready to go. And he kind of whispers to himself, or whispers to Hilo just so that Hilo could hear, if I can't do this, I can't be Pillar. And so he goes out. Hilo gives him this little bit of like, he's really good at deflection, so keep an eye on that. And kind of gives him a squeeze on the shoulder and pushes him out there. And again, we see that Lan is not really devoutly religious, but he kind of sends out a prayer. Old uncle in heaven, judge me the greener of your kin today, if it be so. And he jumps out, and this duel starts. It's not a super long duel as far as things go, but it really showcases that Lan is a good fighter, but that he's clearly out of practice. And Gam very nearly gets the better of him. And like Lan is just able to squeak out of this, but he's not squeaking out unscathed. He gets pretty badly hurt throwing it. Not like a physical, he's not bleeding or anything like that, but internally, like he almost got his heart crushed by Gam. And, Lan is kneeling over top of Gam as he's just killed him and says, thank you, old Uncle Jenshu, for your favor. And then he raises his voice and he says, you carried your jade well, and you died a fist death. You are a worthy opponent, Gam, a loss to your horn. And he wipes both sides of his blade clean. He raises it up and he says, my blade is clean. And I just wrote, damn, that's cool. That was a cool scene and a cool way to end that duel. And he collects all of Gam's jade, and all of the fists and fingers that were there for the No Peak clan drop to their knees and start beating the grounds and kind of letting out their pent-up strength that they've been beating, and they're denting the pavement by doing this. And I just thought, man, that is so intimidating, and I can't think of the word, but it really reminds me that this scene makes me think about when rugby players do their chants, especially like in New Zealand when they're doing the chant before a game and intimidation. I can't think about the name of the chant right now, which is really bothering me, but that's really what the vibe is giving. It's just they're pounding on the ground, denting the pavement. It's really, really cool. Really, really cool. And then I really like that as they're leaving, they're walking away, Lan walks past his car and gets into the Duchess, which is Hilo's car, and sits down with him. And Hilo gets in, kind of gives him another pat on the shoulder and says, like, good job. And he says, you must hurt like a bitch, he said quietly. Lie down, Lan. No one here but us. I just love the relationship between these two brothers. It really feels to me like, at least on Hilo's side of things, there's no sense of competition. He just loves his brother, is happy where he is. I think Lan feels a little bit of jealousy, and again, we'll see it in a little bit almost, and maybe that's affected in some way, but I just really like the relationship between these two brothers. I think it's really good, and I want to see more of it. It's great. We get home, the next chapter, family talk, and Shay's been just waiting to see what's going on. We see that she's waiting with her grandfather, and we see that he's looking really frail and no longer as powerful as he once was, and it says he no longer looks like the Torch of Kekon, which is kind of sad. It's a bit of a sad moment to see Khal Sen and kind of how, I don't know, how big he used to be. And at some point he says he's kind of trying to convince Shay, like, why aren't you living at home? Why don't you come home? And he says to her, I used to say that you were my best grandson. You remember that? And I think he's saying this like he's trying to be kind, or I don't know, pay her a compliment. But I really feel like this is a bit of a backhanded compliment. Like, you wanted to have a grandson, instead you have a granddaughter who is great and is a great granddaughter, clearly was a good green bone and all these things. Like, why can't she just be a good granddaughter? It doesn't have to be a grandson. Anyways, I know that's a cultural thing, but just not great. And Shay herself, the next paragraph, she kind of says to herself, like, she realizes herself with this sense of despair that she'd become something that she swore she would never be. Owen, like her mother, sitting at home, worrying while the men went off to meet danger and met out violence. And it's not great. Again, she's just really out here not knowing what she wants to do and be and who she is. And I feel for her. This is a tough position, but she really needs to figure it out, I think, because it's becoming more and more critical that she knows if she's a part of the clan or not. And we get a bit of a backstory here, some background of kind of how she became such a good greenbone. We find out that as she was growing up, she basically kept this journal where she would note down every time Hilo did something good, every time she did something good, and really try to beat Hilo every single time. She came up top of the class, and Hilo came up 6th. And she's really proud of that. And at first I was like, that's really great. But then you see that Hilo, despite Shay being top of her class and having to work really hard to be really good and then the best green bone she could be, and despite Hilo coming 6th, when they graduate, eventually Hilo became the horn and just has all of these friends and all of these really loyal fingers and fists, because throughout the time that Shay was spending all this extra time studying and doing things, he was basically building up this network and community and trust with people. And I think this to me is like such a great metaphor. It's such an example of how you don't always need to try and be the best. And sometimes it's okay to just be okay. I was told this once by a professor in university where she told me, if you have to work 5 hours to get an 85% on an assignment, but in order to get like the 90%, you have to work 20 hours. Just take the 85% and do something else with those other 15 hours. And I think this to me, like it just brought that back to me. And when she told me that really stuck with me, because it's absolutely right. You don't always need to be the best. And sometimes if it's going to take you all that extra time to get 5% more, is it really worth the extra 5%? And I think this is a prime example of how Shay put in all this extra work to be top of her class, when in reality she probably shouldn't have been. Anyways, I think it's a really good example. And you kind of see again this rivalry between Hilo and Shay. But again, to me at least, it really feels like it's only on Shay's side. Like Hilo, to him, I feel like it's just so simple. At some point it says here, like he says, why are you trying so hard all the time, Shay? Land will be pillar someday, I'll be horn, and you'll be the weatherman. And that's just it. It doesn't matter what we get for grades. And it's just so simple to him. This is what it's going to be. Yes, we want to be good, but we don't need to work so hard all the time. And it's just frustrating. It's just sad to see. And here it says, like, one of the reasons that Shay thinks that Hilo's so upset with her is that she didn't fall into the place that he thought in the vision of the world. Like, she didn't become weatherman. She doesn't want to do that. She left. So anyway, she's sitting around and waiting, and eventually Len and Hilo get back. She runs down to meet them, is so happy that they're alive. And Lan basically says, okay, he says, I'm going to go and talk with my family. Tells Ken to just hang out. Don't let anybody else in. Goes in. And he's only sitting there with Hilo and Shay. And at some point, Shay even says, like, what are we going to invite Doru? Like, what are we doing? And he says, nope, it just can't. It's just us. They can wait. And it's really sending a message that things are changing now. Things are changing. It's not only the guard is changing. The new guard is coming in, and then the old guard is getting phased out more and more. And when they go in, they basically ask, after telling Shay a bit about what happened and all this, so they ask Shay, okay, what's going on? They're like, what's been happening? What did you find out? And Shay basically tells them she found out that the production of the mines has been up 15% this year, which is the biggest increase in over a decade. But there's no accounting for the increase in the KJ financial statements. And when she went to the treasury to try and look at that, allocation to the martial schools and the temples and licensed users is only up by 6%, which leaves an awful lot that's just out in the ether. And so there's an awful lot of stuff that's not being accounted for. Somewhere between the mines and the vault, Jade is going missing. And so this is just not good. And immediately it's like, okay, well, this is Dora. We got to get him. Like, we're getting this guy. And Len brings up a good point, and it is hard to think, but I can't believe that he would betray us to the mountain. He just can't believe that Doru would do that. Despite not liking Doru and not thinking he's good at his job, he just can't believe that he would do that. And then Shay makes a good point. She basically says, I don't know. She basically says, I don't know if Doru is betraying us or not, but he has to go. If he's not a traitor, then he's a negligent weatherman. And that's that, right? Point blank. If he's not the traitor, he has let the mountain get all this extra jade and just not let it slide. So point blank, this is what has to happen. Super clear. And basically now they're starting to make moves. Okay, they're telling Shay to send some of these documents to Woon so that he can look into it further. And then Shay gets dismissed. She's thanked for all of the work she's done. She leaves, and it's just Lan and Hilo in the room. And Shay's left outside, really kind of thinking to herself that she's upset that she's being shut out, but she also can't, like, she told them she didn't want to be involved in business, and she even thinks to herself, she felt like slapping herself hard across the face, on both sides of her face. You can't have it both ways, she thinks. And this is exactly it. I just wrote exactly in all caps. You cannot have it both ways. You're either in the clan or you're out of the clan. That's it. And honestly, it's kind of sad because she even thinks afterwards, like, she didn't even know who she was anymore. It's sad, but she needs to figure it out, and she needs to figure it out fast because things are moving, things are in place, and she just needs to figure it out. Moving on to the next chapter, chapter 22, Honor, Life, and Jade. And this is a really beautiful chapter here between Hilo and Lan, where now they're talking about clan business a little bit more and saying, okay, we need to do something about Hilo, or not about Hilo, about Doru. Lan asks Hilo to make sure that he's keeping an eye on Doru, has somebody keep an eye on him. And classic Hilo is like, we could just bring him in right now. It'll be pretty quick. We'll have a conversation. It'll be done. But, not as easy as that. And we find out that every morning, Sen and Doru have this routine where they're drinking their tea together in the garden and they're playing chess and checkers and all these things. And it's really sweet, but it makes it more confusing because, again, it's why would Doru betray them in this way? And Lan is saying this because he doesn't want, his plan now is if we find out what's going on, once we find out what's going on, we're going to depose Doru quietly so that Granddad never knows what happens. And I disagree with that. I don't think that's the way to go about it. I think if we find out what's happening, they should go present it directly to Granddad and say, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, so that he knows. Yeah, it might be really hard on him, but he needs to understand because he has a false expectation of what reality is right now, and he needs to understand that that's not it. But again, we'll see what happens. I don't think that that's the best strategy. As we keep talking here, Hilo basically starts to realize that Lan's aura is off. And we're in Lan's perspective here, and we see that Lan is thinking these things that just like feels really weird and not like him. And at some point I started to think, has the jade been tampered with? Like, did he get, poison jade or something like that? Is that even something that can happen? And he's thinking, like, Lan is thinking to himself, like, wants it better than Hilo. Like, why would Hilo want this jade? Like, he's really just not, I don't feel like being himself. But then he starts to realize that he can perceive that there's no greed, only concern in Hilo. Again, I just wrote, man, this is great. I love Hilo so much. And then he has this burst of clarity of, oh shoot, it's the jade that I have. And it looks like, it seems like it's not like it's the jade was tampered with, but it's overexposure to jade. When you have too much of it, these symptoms can start to happen, and eventually it'll end up with you getting the itches, which is almost always fatal. We've learned about that before. And so he's finally able to kind of remove some of the jade that he just procured from Gam. And almost immediately he starts to feel, oh wow, like this weight is lifted off his chest. He's like, okay, I feel so much better now. And it's just a really nice moment between the two of them where Hilo's able to help him in that way. And then Hilo drops a bomb and says, okay, I want to marry Wen. And he's asking for Lan's permission. And it's just, again, it's one of those things where, and at some point here it says, Lan kind of realizes that everything for Hilo is just so simple and straightforward. And that's it. He's just always fully committed. And so it's just clear to me that it's clear to me and it's clear to Lan that Hilo loves Wen so much, really wants this to happen, but really wants and needs Lan's permission to do so. Lan feels this thing where he's projecting about his failed marriage, but tries to not project that too much onto Hilo. And then he says, you know how I feel about Wen. She's a lovely girl. She's always been respectful to the clan, and I'd gladly treat her like my sister. But her family is beneath you. Everyone knows the Makes were disgraced. A lot of people in No Peak still think they can't be trusted. And even if they don't say it out loud, they assume Wen is illegitimate. Which sucks. But then he starts going on about, if we did this, it would deface the clan and so on and so forth. And I just basically wrote, like, fuck that. That's their problem, right? Like, that's their problem, other people's problems, not your problem. And that's basically exactly what Hilo says. He says, I don't care what anyone else in the clan thinks. It's you I'm asking. And then again, we're kind of, Lan is really like humming and hawing, and Hilo's trying to call him out, like, don't say that. Don't bullshit me. Don't give me a bullshit excuse. Tell me what you want. Tell me what's going on. And then he says, right, give me your blessing or condemn me, but don't wash your hands of me. It wouldn't mean anything for me to marry Wan without the approval of the pillar. No one would take it seriously. And Lan starts to think, okay, I clearly need to do something here. And then I thought this was a bit of a crazy thing to think in this way, but he says, he thinks to himself, he would damage the relationship with his brother and his horn at a time when the clan could not afford any further weakness in the family. Crazy I have to think about it in this way, but then he's basically like, Lan is kind of coming to terms now with like actually having to be a leader and actually having to make difficult decisions. And eventually he says, you're good. Let's like marry her. I totally understand. And gives Hilo his blessing. And then there's this really cool moment here where Hilo clasps his hand to his forehead and he says, the clan is my blood and the pillar is its master. Should I ever be disloyal to my brother, may I die by the blade. Should I ever fail to come to the aid of my brother, may I die by the blade. Should I ever seek personal gain at the expense of my brother, may I die by the blade. On my honor, my life, and my jade. And he touches his forehead to the carpet, and he just bows down to Lan. And Lan thinks to himself, this is a bit much, like, you don't need to be doing all of this. But when Hilo gets up, he was smiling, his easy, open smile, the one that suggested that he was not worried and that no one else should be either. And all was as it should be. And then as Hilo's walking out, he says, get some sleep before putting that back on, pointing at the jade that he just got from Gam. And just like, man, I love Hilo. What a good moment between these brothers here. So just precious. And so then moving to this last final chapter. It's a short one, chapter 23, Autumn Festival Gifts. And right after this beautiful chapter with these two brothers, we're finding out what's going on with Bero. And every time we come up to this guy, I'm kind of like, wait, I have this second of, wait, who is this guy? Oh, wait, no, this is the guy from the start of the book. And I feel like the story almost wants you to do that. They almost want you to keep forgetting about Bero. Like he's just this insignificant person that's not important. But clearly he is. Something's going to happen. And I said this last time, and we're learning a bit more about what's going on here now. And how Bero's just been kind of stealing and all this stuff, and how he's working for Mutt. And then he gets to meet, I guess, their benefactor, their mountain benefactor. And as we were kind of walking in and learning about to meet this person, I was like, okay, who is it going to be? I tried to guess. I said, maybe it's Gaunt. Maybe I'm going to meet Gaunt. And then I had a moment of, holy shit, what if it's Doru? What if they're working for Doru? Unfortunately, I was wrong for both of those, and it's just a random green bone that I don't think we've gotten the pleasure of meeting yet. But I'm really noting down their description, and I'm going to try and see if I can spot them anywhere else, but I have a feeling we're not going to. And we just get this moment where this green bone gives Bero and another person named Cheeky these big submachine guns and basically tells them, practice this before I send you to use them. And there's this implication there that something is coming up where the mountain is going to be using these guys in some way. And then we have this demonstration of the power that they have over Mutt because of his jade that he wants. And it's just this little scene, like a couple pages, where we just find out more and more about how Bero is getting more and more in with the mountain, and I just know this is not going to turn out well. There's no chance this turns out well. And that's where we end that set of chapters. And I'll be honest, where I'm feeling a little bit confused, like I don't know where we're going to go from here, because we have this let's say peace with the mountain now, because we made this peace. And I don't know. I mean, it's clear that obviously it's not peace, right? Something's going to happen. Something more is going to happen, but I just don't know where it's going to go. I kind of think that Doru has betrayed the clan. Maybe I just think that because I really don't like Doru and the things that he's done. but either he's betrayed the clan or he's really gotten the wool pulled over his eyes in a big way, again, to try and disrupt the No Peak clan. Because if Doru gets removed, or when Doru gets removed, and this is why I don't think that it's a good idea to not tell Kalsen, because if they don't tell Kalsen, when Kalsen finds out, I just think it's going to be a complete and utter mess. He's going to lose it. There's going to be fighting, and that in itself is going to really harm the Call family, and I don't think it's going to be good for the overall state of the No Pika clan. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Before we kind of wrap up the episode, my favorite quote of this set of chapters actually happens, and it's from Lan, and it's right as he's about to give his permission and his blessing to Hilo about marrying Wen, and he says to him, "It's better to think about today when tomorrow might not happen." And I just really like that quote. It's a short one this time, but I just think it gets right to the point. It's better to think about today when tomorrow might not happen. And obviously in this setting, right, they've just gone, like, there's just been a hit on Hilo, and he's basically like, I want to make sure I marry this woman. I don't want to, when this happened, I thought to myself, I don't want to be in this position again where I'm going to regret not making this choice. So obviously most of us aren't in positions like that, but I think the sentiment still really stands. It's better to think about today when tomorrow might not happen. Don't stress too much about everything else. Don't stress too much about everything. Just focus on today, focus on right now, and that's all you can do, because you can't really affect what's going to happen tomorrow. So that was my favorite quote from this set of chapters. The next set of chapters is going to be chapters 24 to 28, and I'm going to hope to set that episode out for August 26th, next week. And that's the end of this chapter. Thank you for joining me on Chapters of Legend. I hope you found something new to notice, a detail to treasure, or a story thread to ponder. Until next time. If you're enjoying the journey, you can help others find the podcast by following, rating, or sharing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can find the show everywhere at Chapters of Legend, and you can email in at chaptersoflegend@gmail.com, and you can follow me on YouTube for a lot more random content. Until next time, keep turning the pages, and keep living in the legend.